Hi, lovelies, and welcome to Global Gist with Beejay. Today, we're talking about Beyonce's Buffalo Soldier shirt. Why do you think it was causing such an uproar on TikTok? A lot of people were saying, why would she wear it? Come on, she wore this shirt during her show last month, being June. And for me, I was thinking it's Black History Month, you get it? But a lot of people were saying, no, she supports genocide. Some people said, she's so insensitive, you guys. I want you to listen to these videos. I will come back with the commentaries.
So recently, while on tour, Beyonce gave a show in Paris on Juneteenth, and a lot of people were upset at a particular article of clothing that she was wearing during the performance. And that was a shirt that on the front depicted the Buffalo Soldiers, who, if you're not familiar, were African-American soldiers that were serving in all-black military units that were formed in the 1860s. And on the back, there was this essay that said, among other things, that the Buffalo Soldiers were effective in defeating antagonists who were the enemies of peace, order, and settlement, and that they included Native Americans who were warring with the United States and Mexican revolutionaries. I considered doing an analysis of this because, after all, I'm an academic that studies pop culture and race. But instead, I thought it might be more useful to walk y'all through the basics of how to do a textual analysis from a critical media perspective so that you can do your own analysis. Oh, and by the way, I don't think that anyone's beyond criticism, but if you leave a comment and it feels like you're taking this as an opportunity to just drag a black woman or black women in general, then I'm going to escort you out of the class, just so we're clear. Now, there are 6 elements to this analysis. The first is we need a scholarly orientation. The second is we need a clearly defined artifact. The third is the relevant context. The fourth is a theoretical or conceptual framework. The fifth is a methodology. And the sixth is an understanding of our own positionality relative to the artifact. So my scholarly orientation is that of a critical media scholar, which means that I look at how media operates within systems of power, specifically social and cultural power in my case. And I also look at how ideologies related to race, class, and gender interact with, modify, challenge, or subvert those systems of power. Now, the artifact is not the shirt itself, it is the performance wherein the shirt is visible and relevant. So that means that we're also looking at the rest of her costume and how she's visually constructed. We're looking at the choreography. We are considering the songs that she's performing as she wears the shirt. We're also looking at the other sort of visual elements of the performance on stage. When discerning the relevant context, you have to make some choices about what to include and what not to include. And you don't have to make the same choices as I would, but I'm going to give you some examples of things to consider. We might consider whether or not Paris as a location is significant, or how the songs that she performed while wearing the shirt factor into the overall performance that night. What are the themes and motifs that have come to characterize the Cowboy Carter tour? We should also probably consider how the American collective imagination conceptualizes cowboys in general, and black cowboys and black soldiers in particular. We should also think about what is the significance of this being done on Juneteenth, and what is happening at the time relative to Native Americans and Mexicans in the United States. Now, when it comes to theoretical and conceptual frameworks, what that means is that we are looking for theories and concepts that can help us to critically engage with the artifact in the pursuit of answering particular questions. Now, what we're not able to do is understand authorial intent. That's not really relevant here. We're not looking at what did she mean to convey. All right. What we're looking at is what messages are conveyed, how could the audience reasonably interpret those messages, and how do those messages interact with broader ideologies on a mass media scale. And just to put a finer point on it, if what you're trying to do is make an argument about what she intended, what she meant as a good person or a bad person or any sort of other moral claim, that's not relevant here. What we're looking at is how this particular artifact interacts with broader society and the ideologies that make up our social system. So if I'm pulling from my own academic point of reference, I would probably use the concept of controlling images as coined by the black feminist scholar Patricia Hill Collins, and I'd probably use the theory of articulation as developed by Stuart Hall. In very basic terms, a controlling image is a stereotype that has become so codified and so popular and ingrained in a society that it has become a way of defining people, such as the Buck or the Jezebel stereotypes that are often used against African Americans. I should probably take this opportunity to clarify that we typically think of stereotypes as being negative, but that is not always the case. Instead, I want you to think of stereotypes as templates for engaging with ideas, and that they can be starting points for creating more dimensional understandings of reality. And for the theory of articulation, again, in very basic terms, the idea is that every time you create a construction or a symbol within mass media, such as a stereotype, you are actually creating a point of convergence for different ideologies that either support those ideologies, transform them, or perhaps challenge them. And so one argument you could make is that Beyonce is attempting to facilitate the development of a new controlling image, that is to say, a particular image of black American identity that is compatible with being a cowboy in the mainstream collective understanding of cowboys, and that at the same time is including aspects of American history that is mythologized and often has ideological components to it. For the methodology, it's actually pretty simple. You find a recording of the concert, you review it multiple times, you look at the front of the shirt, the back of the shirt, the rest of the audio and visual components of the artifact, such as the costume, the music, the choreography, that sort of thing. And then you look for how those elements that you're identifying support or challenge the assertion that you're making. And now we come to the aspect of reflecting on positionality, which is who you are relative to the artifact and who you are within the society in which you are consuming that artifact. So some things to consider using myself as an example. As far as the music goes, I don't have a particular bias for or against Beyonce. I have liked some of her stuff. I'm not a particular fan. I'm largely indifferent. I'm neither a Black American nor am I a woman, and so my experience with those kind of things that might be a part of the construction of her performance are from the perspective of an outsider. Furthermore, I'm not a cowboy. However, I was raised around them. My dad's a cowboy, my tios are cowboys in the style of Mexican cowboys, rancheros, norteños, that kind of thing. So I have some lived experience with that. And as I just mentioned, I'm of Mexican descent, which is relevant because her shirt mentions Mexican revolutionaries as the enemies of peace, and we're currently living in a moment where we are being targeted for mass deportation by the US government. Now, by using all of the elements that I just discussed, you can make an interpretation and thus an argument about how this performance engages with ideologies in a mass media landscape. And there's one last thing you need to keep in mind, and that is that the assertion you are making is not a capital T absolute truth, okay? It is a lowercase t truth, a truth that exists alongside other truths. You are making a case based off of the evidence that you have, the scholarship you have access to, and your own understanding of how the performance played out and where it exists within our mass media landscape. And so there can be multiple strong, conflicting, and contradictory truths that come out of that. You are making the case for how you see things. And you might be thinking, well, then what's the point? If I'm not going to be making a capital T absolute truth claim, then why am I doing this? And the point is this. A large part of critical work is helping people to understand the construction of ideology when it happens in front of them and they don't even realize it, okay? This is revelatory work where you're helping people to grapple with the ways in which ideological constructions happen in day-to-day life.
Hey friends, we're going to talk about this uproar that has been caused by this shirt that Beyonce was wearing with the buffalo soldiers on the front and the not so nice things about tribes on the back. I'm currently working on my Master's of Legal Studies in Indigenous Peoples Law, so I'm going to be lending that background, that history, to this discussion. Now, I'm sure we've all seen this video being stitched over and over again of this one woman in particular using the argument that the 5 civilized tribes had slaves and sided with the Confederacy, therefore what is on the back of Beyonce's shirt is justified. I want you to ask yourself, before we even dive into this, why were they called the 5 civilized tribes? It's because the people in power at the time, the white people in power at the time, saw that these 5 tribes had adopted Christianity, had a slave-based economy, which obviously is not a good thing, but it's a historical fact we can't change, amongst other things that they viewed as civilized. Now, each of these tribes has an individual tribal name, but these folks in power saw these quote-unquote civilized things and decided to call them the 5 civilized tribes. Now, with this argument that this woman is making, she's saying that they sided with the Confederacy. Yeah, they did. That's, again, a historical fact we can't change. But I want you to ask yourself, why did they side with the Confederacy? And I'm going to let you think about it for a moment before I give you the answer. Probably the first thing that comes to mind is, well, they had a slave-based economy. The Confederacy wanted to keep slavery around, so it just makes sense for them to side with them. Yeah, that is definitely part of their argument. Yeah. But let's dig a little deeper here. These tribes had signed various treaties with the U.S. government, or the Union, however you want to look at it, and each of those promises had been broken. Would you trust someone who had broken promises to you over and over and over again? Probably not. And in this particular case, the Confederacy knew that and decided to then promise these tribes protection from other tribes, told them they could keep their slave-based economy, would give them tribal land rights, and would also give them tribal sovereignty. So it makes sense that these tribes sided with the Confederacy, but I want you to notice that this was a manipulation to get tribes to do what they wanted them to do. So using this argument to justify what's on the back of Beyonce's shirt is not cool, because you are taking 5 tribes and using that as a monolith for the hundreds of tribes that are in the US. I thought we had finally gotten past the point where we now all realize that it's not okay to do that. But I guess we're still doing it. So here we are. Yeah, don't do that. You can't compare, say, my tribe, the Menominee from Wisconsin, with, say, the Dene in New Mexico. Different languages, different traditions, different in so many ways. So you can't compare the two. You can't turn hundreds of tribes into a monolith based on 5 tribes just to suit your needs to make this argument that is actually a non-argument. Now, let's move past this argument and talk about the Buffalo Soldiers in particular, which is on the front of her shirt, which, you know, most people probably don't know about because public education sucks. Just gonna say it. The Buffalo Soldiers, placing them in time is after the Civil War. So we were just talking about Civil War, now we're after, not much farther after, but we're after the Civil War. And these African Americans were used via militia to protect settlers and push tribes off of their traditional homelands for westward expansion. Now, we're going to go back to a point I made earlier of the U.S. government manipulating people into doing things that they want to do by making promises that they can't keep. These soldiers were promised U.S. citizenship if they did this. So, here's another example. Maybe we shouldn't trust the government because they will manipulate groups of people. So, long story short, with all of this historical context, let's pick up a history book because public education is not the best, or you just weren't paying attention in history class, or likely a combination of the two. Let's use critical thinking. That's a big one right there. Third but not least, let's not idolize celebrities. We all know that Beyonce is highly specific about her messaging. So you can't tell me this was an oopsie on her part. You cannot. She is probably one of the most specific artists out there, okay? So let's think about our arguments before putting them out there on the internet. Let's think about the historical context and how maybe they are a non-argument that, white supremacist groups like to use to distract and divide folks.
If a Latino told you that African Americans were the enemies of peace, order, and settlement, would you defend that? If an indigenous person told you that African Americans were the enemies of peace, order, and settlement, would you defend that? If an Asian American told you that African Americans were the enemies of peace, order, and settlement, would you defend that? If a white person told you that African Americans were the enemies of peace, order, and settlement, would you defend that? Because apparently you would. And mind you, this isn't a situation where a Fox News reporter got the facts wrong and, tapped into their misogyny war bag. Like, nah, this is just a situation where Beyonce is wrong for doing this. She's 100% in the wrong for not vetting this and for even showing up, popping out with that shirt on in the first place. And yet, still, excuses, false equivalencies run amok. There's even talk about how Native Americans own slaves. And I'm not denying that some Native Americans own slaves, because that's objectively true. But the way that this talking point is being used, especially in this moment, is so funny to me because it's coming from the same group of people that hated when other races and ethnic groups categorize all black people as one monolithic group. And the same group of people who hate when that happens are the exact same people categorizing all Native Americans as one monolithic group. Mind you, we're talking about thousands of tribes with their own customs, languages, and ways of thinking, and yet we're just going to conveniently put them all into one monolithic group to say that they all did this, they were all engaged in this, therefore Beyonce's actions are excused in full. I also love hearing the excuse that this Buffalo Soldiers t-shirt was taken from a website, written by AI, and Beyonce didn't release the merch. Like, that doesn't make it worse, because you're a Beyonce fan. When have you known Beyonce to half-ass anything? You know this. I know this. Her and her team are well known to vet everything, to go over every single meticulous detail. That's what makes her albums amazing, her art amazing, her music amazing, her stage presence and performances amazing. And yet she let this slide, and then didn't even add in the nuance of the Buffalo Soldiers and how they were enslaved and psychologically set up to fight for the U.S. empire, which makes the whole thing so much more worse and horrible when you really put it into context, when you add in the nuance of white people putting an enslaved, oppressed class against another enslaved, oppressed class, all to benefit white people at the end. But no, accountability must be dodged because Beyonce is dropping a rock album next. So prepare for nothing else to come out of this but excuses, false equivalences, and talking points that just lack nuance entirely.
Native Americans are not going to be results of accountability. You don't know your own history, so you get confused when black people talk about ours. The Buffalo Soldiers were fighting for the United States. Y'all was fighting for the Confederacy. Y'all don't want to talk about how the Chickasaw, the Cree, the Cherokee all signed documents with the Confederacy, owned slaves, and voted to keep Jim Crow fucking laws. You niggas is not well. You are not well. Y'all was just as bad as them white folks, and you want me to be mad that you participated in a genocide? You participated in terrorism, the demise of black people, and participated in the enslavement and the chattel slavery of blacks, as well as segregation and racism to conform to the white man. Y'all niggas is just as bad, please.
That shirt isn't Beyonce saying that natives were enemies. It's actually the historical quote from the U.S. government that they told the Buffalo Soldiers. And it's got y'all so hot at Beyonce and black people just as a whole, which is interesting. So during the late 1800s, the Buffalo Soldiers were promised freedom, land, and citizenship if they participated in the westward expansion. They told the black soldiers that the natives were hostile savages and enemies of peace. That's how they convinced them, along with the lies and promises. It was just propaganda. They were being tricked by a system that enslaved them to help that empire further expand and build and oppress, all under a guise. They were manipulated. Beyonce wore that shirt to bring awareness to the manipulation, to the hypocrisy of the US government. She's not siding with colonizers. She's actually informing the people how black and natives were used and pitted against each other because they were lied to. The real enemies are not natives and black people. Who do you think it is? It's not Beyonce either. Y'all going real hard. The indigenous groups, the native groups or whatever are going real hard with that anti-black stuff, and that's real interesting. It's kind of hurtful, so I ain't gonna lie to you. It's real, you're real racist out here. It got racist real fast too. But I mean, at the same time, I'm a black American, so I'm used to being criminalized for just trying to live and survive. So,
Hey, I'm coming on because I want to know if people of color and blacks realize what the fuck is going on here. Like, we are in the middle of a war, right? We are fighting for our freaking lives and our children's future here. And you guys want to argue about Beyonce saying, or if she even said it, has 3% indigenous inside of her, right? I am astonished at the level of bullshit that y'all pick up in this season. We just had the Supreme Court go along with Trump on birthright citizenship, which doesn't affect blacks at all because we are guaranteed citizenship by the 14th Amendment. So it affects every fucking body else, right? We got a Congress who is trying to take our children off of Medicaid and off of SNAP. 11 million people, right? And of those 11 million, some of them are children. $200 billion cut on SNAP. So children are going to be starving in the middle of a month. They trying to sell federal land behind our back, which directly affects the indigenous community. So does Medicaid and food stamps. And y'all on this motherfucker arguing about somebody saying they got 3% indigenous inside of her. I mean, is that really a big fucking deal? I mean, is it going to stop the world? I mean, is it going to stop what's happening to us in America? No, it isn't. Because if Beyonce wanted to go live in France, Beyonce could pack up her family because she can afford it and go live in France while your ass is stuck here in the same fucking war. I mean, this is stupid. And then let me tell you something else. Half of fucking America is a damn mutt.
As a person of the Creek Indians who sided with the Confederacy, we are the other Indians that the Buffalo Soldiers were employed by through the United States to move off of their land with the Creek Treaty of 1866 after we sided with the Confederacy. So we are those other Indians. My Creek card is pinned on my page. So any pale-skinned Native Americans claiming to be those other Indians are wrong. They're talking about the Creek Indians who sided with the Confederacy. And they used the Buffalo Soldiers with the Emancipation Proclamation document of 1861 that said if you join the Union, you will no longer be held as slaves in the southern states. So what did they do? They joined the Union and yes, fought against their brothers and sisters who did not. And then those people in the southern states who were considered rebels will be taken with the Emancipation Proclamation that states in Section 9, if you still reside in rebel states, you will be taken as a captive of war. So yes, it was brothers fighting against brothers. And was it none of those people pale? All of those were American Indian people. The Creek Indians are the Indians that they were moving off of their land. So how about y'all stay out of it and stop trying to conflate your history with ours? This all happened after the Civil War. The only people running around was the American Indians just freed with the 14th Amendment. So stop it. Native Americans weren't here. Those were Creek Indians who they moved off of our land with the Creek Treaty of 1866 to Oklahoma. That's the other Indians they're talking about. And we are all of the same color.
So I'm seeing all the Native Americans talk about Beyonce and her shirt. And I want to be nice because I've been an activist on pretending Indians, but we need to talk about the Native Americans that actually had slaves. And a lot of you guys make a lot of jokes about Cherokee princesses, but Cherokees are a civilized tribe that had black slaves. There were 5 civilized tribes. And I would like to see the DNA test of all the Native Americans on this app that pick on the descendants of Cherokee slaves. Like I know a lot, all the slaves, if you look at African DNA tests, you will literally see that the most slaves were brought to Cherokee land, to tribes. Like, I'm seeing so many posts, like the shirt was based
solely on the 5 civilized tribes that kept slaves after they were free longer than Texas. Longer than Texas. And the fact that you guys are like, oh, you blacks are always saying you guys are Cherokee. No, Cherokees had a ton of black slaves. Blackfoot, so many of these tribes had so many black slaves. I get it. Oh, there's millions of other native tribes that had nothing to do with it. But what about the loud ones that did? What about the loud ones that literally signed off land for $4 million? And y'all like, no, we need to give land back. No, these 5 civilized tribes gave up your land. There's documentation of this trade. There's documentation of slaves on native land, and you guys are mad at Beyonce. I would love to see the DNA test of all the Native Americans. Who are the civilized tribes and who are not the civilized tribes? Let's see. Because I did my DNA test to prove, like, I've been trying to prove all this shit. Like, I've been a pro, fuck pretending Indians bullshit all day. But now, for the natives to get on here and say, oh, natives didn't do shit to y'all, why the fuck would she wear that shirt? And y'all don't know the history behind the civilized tribes that shirt was made for? It's pissing me off. Like, and then you, like, what? Like, I can't get with it. Like, I can't get with it because, yeah, Cherokees had a shit ton of black slaves. So if you meet a girl from Louisiana and she says she got some Cherokee in her, even if it's 1%, I don't get the jokes anymore. I really don't get the, like, you guys are picking on descendants of slaves because their grandmother said that their grandmother was on a native plantation. Okay.
In conclusion, to be honest, for me, I would say Beyonce was wearing that shirt in honor of the Buffalo Soldiers, yeah, an all-black military regiment that served after the Civil War. Yeah, on the surface, right, it looked like a powerful tribute to Black history. Period. I really do not see any reason why some people would take it personal because Beyonce is also partly black. She's also a Native American. So I don't see the reason why everyone is saying, "Oh, she's coming for us. She's so insensitive." There's nothing like that, you guys. It happened in June, and June was Black History Month. Yeah, for me, she celebrated it. I was so happy when I saw it initially. That was why I didn't really pay attention to it until I kept seeing the videos on my FYP. I'm like, no, let me talk about it. So, do you think that Beyonce was honoring African heritage, or do you think she was trying to, she was trying to be controversial? I want to see your comments in the comment section. Please do not forget to subscribe, to like, and to comment. I'll be back just in a jiffy with a better one.